Thanks, comrades. My name is Ritchie, and I'm a socialist. I'm not a liar, I'm not a perjurer, I'm not a conspirator, I'm not a faction fighter, I'm not a scab, I'm not a Nazi collaborator who would stick Jews in to the Gestapo during the Holocaust. I'm not an actor who thinks he's a politician, nor a politician who thinks he's an actor. I'm a socialist. A socialist for countless complex reasons, like any of you. A socialist because as a child, I saw my mother and father working 16 to 18 hours a day to feed and clothe us and to keep a roof over our head. The same tin roof that blew off during high winds. In one of the homes, 40% of whom in County Fermanagh were classified as unfit for human habitation as recently as 1970. During the same childhood, on the horizon I could see the castle surrounded by deer wandering around the parklands of the landed estate of Lord Brugbre, the longest serving Orange Tory Prime Minister of Northern Ireland. At school we debated the Northern Ireland Civil Rights Movement, the France 68 movement, of a revolt of the youth and the working class with a general strike that threatened the rule of the rich. I'm also a socialist because in 1973 the Ted Heath Tory government deliberately confronted the working class of this country in a showdown, leading to the miners' strike, which showed the power of collective action by the working class and eventually toppled that government in February '74. And as a young socialist in Liverpool, I organised and helped organise solidarity with Lancashire miners, whose class solidarity and community unity helped to breathe life into the socialist ideas germinating in my young mind. That's some of the reasons why I'm a socialist. And there's nothing unique about my experiences or the conclusions it's driven me to for anybody in their teens. Today's young generation may be sickened by wave after wave of cynical, self-seeking politicians, but they're beginning to start in revolt in a society under capitalism red in tooth and claw, which means that 1 in 4 children in Scotland, in 21st century Scotland, go hungry, which means that 1 in 4 pensioners in this country have to choose between heating and eating because they're caught between the hammer of profiteer and power companies and the anvil of pauper level pensions. It means that wages are the lowest share of national wealth for working people since records began exactly 50 years ago. Young workers are discriminated against for the sake of the idle rich. Women workers earn only about 3/4 the wage of male workers. Super exploitation for super profits. Class dictates how long you live. Manual workers live on average 7 years less than the average of the population in this country. A few statistical reminders of the world we have to change. But the cold statistics of capitalist exploitation take their human form and their human toll. Mary MacDonald, a woman in Knightswood, is currently being brought to court for debt by the Quango Glasgow Housing Association. She's 86. 33-year-old Ian Curry was found dead in Govan this week after committing suicide because, according to his partner, he could not live with the fact he was unable to bring in a steady wage for her, him and their child. The men and women in Thompson's Holiday Company, who this week heard, some of them on the radio, that their company's closing them down at Christmas, who wept in anger and anxiety, they're a human example of the consequences of capitalism. After that company has robbed the public of £2.5 million in public subsidy. Or the mothers, the fathers, the partners and siblings of the young men and women killed in wars for war and empire is a human reminder of the world we have to change. And the unique thing about the Scottish Socialist Party's message is this, that we believe that to change the world, to avoid poverty, inequality, to avoid war and devastation, to make jobs, wages, to make health, education, to make people's lives plentiful and secure, then we need collective action to bring about the collective ownership of the vast wealth in Scotland and internationally. We need unity to bring about a socialist future. And that's why the Scottish Socialist Party is the party of struggle, solidarity and socialism. Now, Tommy Sheridan and some others who've become our newborn detractors and deserters have started to talk a lot about solidarity and to tell us that the reason they're leaving the SSP is that we need a class struggle based socialist party in Scotland. These people, unfortunately, seem to be suffering a dose of gross and selective amnesia for their own convenience. Because when you look at the record of the Scottish Socialist Party, it demonstrates that there's absolutely no political justification in splitting this party in order to fight for solidarity and class struggle. Time prevents me properly describing them. But if you glance at some of the movements and struggles we've been involved in, it tells you that story. The Liverpool Dockers, 500 of them locked out in October 1995. Within 2 weeks, we had started organising support groups across the length and breadth of Scotland, raised hundreds of thousands of pounds by touring workplaces with them and for them, organised demonstrations, spoke at their rallies in Liverpool, organised occupations of the Clydesdale Bank because of its involvement in that dispute, and were hailed by the Dockers Shop stewards as the best support group in Europe. That's part of our record. Or if you look at the Glacier Metal Workers' occupation of their factory, when they were sacked en masse just before Christmas 1995, instead of walking out, they stayed in wisely and occupied the factory. The next morning, I went down and offered solidarity, and the rest of the story consists of an occupation of 7 weeks, during which those workers used their power in the factory to win back all their jobs and save their trade union rights. And during the course of which, the people, the small group, but actually the biggest group that's defecting with Tommy, the Socialist Workers' Party, were asked to leave the factory during workers' mass meetings. I was co-opted onto the occupation committee as an advisor and organiser during that factory occupation. We don't need lessons on solidarity and struggle from some of these comrades. And if you look at some of the more recent disputes, even just referring to them, when the firefighters confronted the government, one party and one only was on the picket lines, the demonstrations, raising cash, raising support, giving them platforms, the Scottish Socialist Party. When the nursery nurses, previously inexperienced, overwhelmingly women trade unionists, took on Labour and SNP councillors, one party consistently helped them on the picket lines, in the Parliament, by meeting with them in the pubs and the cafes to help them to claim ownership of their own union branches to fight for their cause of decent pay and conditions. The nursery nurses, I'm sure, would gladly confirm the role of the Scottish Socialist Party. When the RMT membership in various different disputes were on the picket lines, who was there? We were there. When the civil servants fought job losses, or privatisation of their service, or pay cuts and low pay, who not only organised them, who not only gave tactical advice and strategic advice to people and socialists within that movement, within that union, it was the Scottish Socialist Party. And when one comrade in that union says that they're leaving the SSP to join Solidarity, maybe they should read their own quotations on the Scottish Socialist Party bulletins as recently as this July, where they praised the SSP and called them PCS members to join Scotland's United Socialist Party, the Scottish Socialist Party. They're being entirely inconsistent and forgetful at its most generous. Or when it came to the battle to defend pension rights against the theft of the Labour government, the Scottish Socialist Party were instrumental, particularly in unison, not only in giving support when action took place and building the marvellous one-day strike of the 23rd of March, but of actually pioneering the fight within the unions for that unified one-day strike of local government workers. Our record, comrades, is a proud one. Our record is unrivalled in the political parties of Scotland on that front. And I think it's all the more grotesque, therefore, when our former convener, the comrade that we fought, sweated and toiled to get elected to Parliament, when our former convener then says that it's necessary to take forward a new party to form Solidarity and have a class struggle socialist party. Tommy went from a position where he trashed this party during the course of his court trial, calling us perjurers, liars, and the mother of all stitch-ups. His was actually the mother of all inventions. That's what he was involved in first. Within minutes of winning his legal action, he then proclaimed as an act of revenge against honest socialists with the courage to stand up for the truth and to refuse to rewrite history. As an act of revenge, he declared he was going to stand against and defeat Colin Fox as national convener of the SSP. He spent the following few days in a hotel paid for by Daily Record on a temporary salary of £30,000 to then say it's either me or oblivion, that's him, not me or oblivion, and that we were scabs and he was out to destroy the scabs. He did all of that and then discovered something, that actually members of the SSP have got minds of their own and they're not prepared. They're not prepared to countenance the thought of somebody of that outlook becoming the national convener. And because he's not going to win, he's leaving, so as to set up a party that we will become the leader of. I think that's appalling. I think it's sad. I also think it's disgraceful. Because I think, frankly, that the trade unionists in the party and outside the party, in particular, will recognise the empty nonsense of those who argue that there's space and room and justification in having a second socialist party with similar policies. Workers who disagree with their union leadership, workers who cannot find themselves immediately elected to the leadership of the trade union, don't just walk out and set up a rival trade union that they are guaranteed to become the General Secretary of. They value far too much the whole concept of workers' unity in struggle against the employer, against the government, against capitalism red in tooth and claw, to play politics with the unity of the workers' movement in that fashion for their own selfish ends. I don't have much time for anybody who puts self before socialism, because socialism is collective action, is collective ideas, is collective formations, or it's not socialism, and therefore I stand by the SSP. Tommy and others have rightly preached the virtues of Scotland ahead of other countries having one unified socialist party. What has changed? The conditions of working people has actually worsened. The need for one unified socialist party has increased, and yet they've gone down this road of splitting and dividing. And one individual trade unionist who's joined them has said, to quote, that this formation of Solidarity is a bright new dawn for trade unionists and socialists. Well, frankly, if breaking the hard-won unity of the most successfully unified socialist party in Europe is a new dawn, may the gods protect us from the dark winter nights in Scotland, if that's a dawn.